test. Call to order Whittier City Council regular meeting Tuesday, September 18th, 7 p.m.
Roll call. Peter Denmark.
Here.
Victor Shen.
Here.
Monty Irvin.
Here.
Dave Dickinson.
Here.
Deborah Hicks.
Here.
Dave Pinkish is absent and he did send me a notification. And Dan Blair.
Here. Let the record show administration present.
Dan. Motion to excuse this.
Okay, I'd ask for a motion to excuse Dave Pinkush from tonight's meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Aye. Let the record show administration present. Our interim city manager, Jim Hunt. Kyle Sinclair, our harbor master. Our police chief, Greg Russell. That's all I'm seeing. Oh, is Scott's here?
Yeah, and Annie is.
Okay. You're looking short. Okay. All right. Andy Reeves and Scott Corby are also here. Okay. I'd ask for a motion for approval of minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 21st, 2018 and September 13th, 2018.
Discussion? Hearing none?
Calling for a vote. Dave Dixon.
Yes.
Peter Denmark.
Yes.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
Monty Irvin. Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'd ask for approval of tonight's agenda with amendments.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the regular meeting agenda with the following amendment to move item 12 to item 5A. Item 12, presentations, to item 5A.
Second.
Calling for a vote. Dave Dickinson.
Yes.
Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
Peter Denmark.
No.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
Monty Irvin.
Yes.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Okay. We are ready for our presentation.
Thank you, Council. For the record, my name is Mike Kelly. I'm the superintendent of the Chugach School District. And I provided last week to you a couple of documents that I also brought hard copies of tonight. They're simply informational this evening. No action is requested or required. The first one is this one. It speaks to the boundary change explanation. Thank you. The boundary change explanation. The school board followed statutory procedures to make a proposal to adjust the boundaries within our school district. Currently, we have two sections for the election of board members. One is Whittier. Section 2 is the rest of Prince William Sound. Traditionally, over the last 20 years, we have had almost exclusively, all but about 2 elections, we've had everybody coming from Tititlic. It's the board's request or desire to have each of our 3 communities, Chenega, Tititlic, and Whittier, be represented with voting members on the school board. And so their proposal that is on here is simply to recast a section line, is the statutory language, and there's a sample of what that would look like on the map there that would allow for a designated seat in Chenega. So if the board makes the proposal, I spent time with the Attorney General's office, with the Division of Election, with the Division of, or the Department of Education to get this on the ballot. It will be on the ballot coming up on October 2nd. And I thought it'd be prudent for me to explain that to you, because if I were to look at the language that is on the ballot, I'd scratch my head a little bit if I hadn't been a part of it, trying to understand what it means. But it simply means that the board is looking to put recast a section values, divide section 2 into 2 parts so that Chenega has a voting seat. What has to happen before this can take place is that it goes before the members of this community, of this district. So it would be all 3 communities. So you'll see this on the ballot coming up. If it passes, then it'll be up to the Division of Elections and the Department of Education to decide where that line goes, and it would go into effect a year from now for the next election. So it has nothing to do with this year's, it's just for the coming year. So I thought it would be important for me to share that with the leaders of this community, because if I was sitting in your seat, I still don't know if I would fully understand what that meant if I wasn't in education. I would allow for questions if the chair.
So currently, Mike, it sounds like the way it's set up is that there could be members from Whittier and members from Tititlic, but Chenega could possibly be excluded the way it is right now.
Through the chair, that's correct. And what typically happens is the members are all coming from Tititlic with Chenega excluded. The board currently has an advisory member from Chenega because they want that voice, but they're a non-voting member. The board doesn't have the authority to just add somebody without going through an election. So that's correct. Whittier's seats don't change. This is section 1, remains as is. All seats still are elected at large. So everybody in the whole district votes for each of those seats.
Including Chenega?
Is the question, does Chenega vote? So yes, including Chenega.
Because I was just wondering, is something being excluded here? And evidently not.
Through the chair, no, nothing's being excluded. There's nothing behind the scenes of this one. It's simply that Chenega, of the smallest communities, just rarely gets somebody elected to the school board. And if a seat is designated there, then it would ensure that takes place. And we would have each of our 3 communities represented on the school board moving forward. Yeah. Thank you. The other item that I'd like to present to you is a resolution from the school board that they passed at their last school board meeting regarding the conversation around borough formation. As you can imagine, that there are, well, this resolution, if you were to walk through, and I won't walk through every one of these points, it basically makes a statement of the impact and the potential impact impact that would happen to the school district. I think inherently the formation of a borough impacts the school district. It can be argued whether it's positive or negative, but it will impact the school district. Boroughs only allow, by statute, only allow for one school district, so there'd be a combination of at least 3 or maybe 4 if you considered, if it goes forward with Girdwood, combination of those districts into one. A potential for losing the innovation that Chugach is known for under a borough assembly and a different school board. Funding is significantly impacted currently as we're called an REAA, a Regional Education Attendance Area, basically an unincorporated area, as you well know, that a part of our local contribution actually comes from our impact aid, which is federal funding. Traditionally, that federal funding goes directly to the school district. Since we don't have any other local taxable contribution that we provide, like Anchorage might, we give back 90% of our impact aid as our local contribution. If we were to form a borough, we would keep that small amount, but we would have to provide our own local contribution some other way. Most districts, through taxes or whatever, we would have to find another way to make that contribution. That would be significant. The funding formula for education is also relatively complex, but it starts with a basic number. Right now in the state, it's just under $6,000, called the base student allocation. And then there are multipliers to determine what the final funding will be. And it's based on a per student number. There's a geographic cost factor, which I reference in here. The geographic cost factor is based on the size and the remoteness and kind of the cost of living, if you will. The geographic cost factor for the Chugach School District is 1.496. That's a multiplier times the BSA. The other communities, Valdez, Cordova, and Girdwood, all have lower multipliers, lower geographic cost factors. So ultimately, if a borough were formed, I would imagine there'd be some kind of, we wouldn't determine that, the state would determine what that would be, but I'm sure it would be less than what we get. All that to say that there'd be financial implications, there'd be educational delivery implications, voices on a school board which now has 2 seats in Whittier, there'd be implications there. So the therefore at the end from the school board simply suggests, and I will say just before I read this, is that the school board is well aware that conversations have just been at a very preliminary stage. There's no accusations that anything sneaky is going on. They realize that there's not much, it's should we do a plan, should we help pay for a study and those types of things. So everybody understands that, but the board came to me and said, so what could this mean to us? And chose to do this. So it simply says, therefore be it resolved, the Chugach School District School Board urges the Whittier City Council and the Girdwood Governance Committee to invite and include the Chugach School District leadership to all meetings and discussions regarding the proposal to incorporate Prince William Sound, which incorporates the Chugach School District. We have strong advocates for education. I spent 5 years as a Commissioner of Education, fully versed in statute and regulations, and would be, I think, could be a reasonable voice to sit alongside of you as a stakeholder in these conversations. So they asked me to present this to you this evening.
Yeah, that sounds like a great suggestion.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. On the mayor's report, I met with our state lobbyist, and I met with our interim city manager a couple of times this month. That's about it. Moving on to manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize for not having it in print. I will next time. It seems that I just kept adding to it as each day went by. So if you'll bear with me here. Since we last met you in person, I attended the AML board meeting representing Alaska managers, administrators, and the city of Whittier, proudly I might say. I met with, during that conference, I met privately with the Office of Management and Budget Director Pat Pitney, the Commissioner of Commerce and Economic Development Mike Navarre, spoke to Governor Walker, who expressed a desire to come visit us here in Whittier, and I'm working to arrange a visit. I also next week met with Commissioner Navarre in Anchorage at his office to discuss opportunities and challenges here in Whittier. The Army Corps has resumed work on the Navigation Improvement Feasibility Study, and the Director's report is anticipated in January, this January of 19. We received our statement and notice from the state that what was once called revenue sharing and is now community assistance, we will receive $79,692. We are currently reviewing the Girdwood contract and possible amendments. The Army Corps visited us last Friday, and that included also 3 people from headquarters back in Washington, D.C. to take a look at the head of the bay to see what was going on there. Now, so along with our staff and directors, toured the city and the facilities and ours, the railroad, and everything else. There was absolutely no wind and many thousands of bugs. So they got to really experience something really unique. They didn't stay in one place too long. Met with the city attorney at no cost to the city to catch up to speed on some of the things that are going on. I met with representatives from North Pacific Seafoods, met with citizens, business owners, council members. We are currently working on a new procurement policy. We're working on new administration policies, which will, many will also come through council. And I think I'll leave the officers in the police departments to Director Russell out there. I too met with Chris, our state lobbyist, and a suggestion to the mayor. We discussed this last Thursday while you had your special meeting. I attended the Eastern Kenai Peninsula Emergency Safety Area Board meeting and proposed that perhaps Whittier could belong and participate in the Kenai Borough's funding and road. And what we found out is Girdwood, since it's not actually in the borough, is not allowed to participate as far as in the funding, and they just have a mutual aid agreement. And right now we would end up with the same thing, but with no advantage on our runs or our reimbursement for runs. However, Hope and Cooper Landing do pay us for our training and expertise. So we're still going to be receiving funding, through the program, through the highway program. Also some good news. Hopefully we'll know something here in the next few days or within the week. I believe we have selected, or I firmly believe that we have selected a CPA finance management team. And one of my critical concerns was, and we don't have, their quote yet, for what they have to do, because we all know they're going to have their hands full, is that they also, besides the management of payroll, assisting with budgets all the way down the line, they also work and report on grants and grant reporting. And that's going to be a big help, a very big help. And one thing I would like to add, just as two things, as a follow-up. I do have the legal expenditures from 17 and legal fees to date. In 2017, the city spent $229,363. Through July of this year, taking into consideration the heavy fees for the DeLong Dock negotiations and some personnel matters, through July, we're at $168,000. So I just wanted to get that out there and share that.
I'm sorry, excuse me. That expenditure was for what now? Oh, legal expenditure.
That was legal. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Thanks for the clarification. And we had also discussed a meeting or so back about an appraisal for the P12 building. And it looks like at this point, what we could do is go back to that very same estimator, since the report was finalized 10/12/17. And at that time, they were directed, to prepare for disposal. And it might be possible now just to have it reviewed and adjusted for any minimal cost, up or down since then, without having to go out and go out for bids and contracts. We could just go back to this person, this firm, and do that. And that's what I have for now. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that we are talking to a viable CPA firm. And is that an interim thought, or are we thinking of contracting our financial management needs to this outside firm?
Through the mayor, I believe that's going to be a question for all of us and just not me, depending on what the fee is, in return, for the management of that department. It's definitely, we're probably looking at a 4 to 6 month contract at this point, and then we can take a look at it and decide if we want to go forward.
And that 4 to 6 month contract, that includes daily accounting chores?
Everything.
Thank you.
Yes.
So thanks for clarifying the legal fees. There was some fake news out there, and I actually fielded two kind of rumor things. One is, I can see that Naylene's here, so I know that there was a rumor that our receptionist was going to be here, and I was so I'm glad that rumor's not good. The other rumor was the position of interim Department of Administration. Is that position still an interim position?
Would you mind clarifying that again? I was hearing it and I wasn't processing.
There was the assistant city manager made the decision that our administration was in dire need of a Department of Administration, and found it in our broken Title II, and we had a workshop, and in that workshop we were told that was, if she made that decision, that it would be done as an interim position. So I know that we have a Department of Administration. Director of Administration. Oh, okay, Director of Administration. And so the question is the director still an interim position, or is that now a magic full-time position?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll need to go back and take a look and, speak to the assistant and look at the record so I could answer accurately.
Okay.
That's some information I can use.
All right. So, any other questions for Jim?
Yeah, I have one question. If this CPA firm can effectively do their job even on a daily basis, on a yearly contract that would be about the same as having an employee, is a nice thing to be doing and considering, because it seems to have gotten a little bit out of hand, and we're kind of putting a corral around it at this point.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
And Jim, can I ask you about Cassell right now? We can discuss it later too under council discussion, but any updated timeline on when we might get a 2018 year-to-date report from Cassell?
Andy might have an update when she gets up here next. I'm not.
I heard it's about a week and a half left.
About a week and a half left? Okay, thanks.
And a follow-up question on that topic? There has been conversation at this table that given the expense and the inability of personnel to interface with Casell, and that the harbor is still not an integral part of it, does it make sense to stay with this system?
Couple questions there, and more than 2 or 3 layers and answers. We are functioning with Casell, and the reason we were, let me just back it up, we have to reconcile, I'd say most, or at least half to 3/4 of 2017, my contract with them, and then in order to even address 18, to reconcile our records at this point.
So does that, to me, that renders it a non-viable system.
Well, I need to be clear. You've heard garbage in, garbage out.
I do, and I understand.
Well, we
personnel of the program, there seems to be a problem with that interface if we're over a year behind.
That is a human error or lack of human attention in the billing system. Incorrect line charges, no charges, bills not being paid, not being reconciled, credit cards. That was a human caused problem, which we are now rectifying, which is extremely painful as far as the amount of work. And the harbor, yes, they do have a different system, and in my ideal world, we'd all be on the same server operating the same systems, and then we can all just dive in, and access it and work on it. So that's a goal. That's a goal.
But from your perspective, being relatively new, that this is a resuscitatable program for the city to use?
Yes.
And since we've had it, I haven't detected any significant degree of comfort by any of the finance directors. There always seem to be something. Anyway, I'm bringing it up because there has been some conversation here about the viability of Casell, and wondering if it is worth a look at something else instead of beating the same dead horse over and over again.
Jim, did you use, you're familiar with Casell?
Yeah,
you used it before?
I've used Casell, in other places, and also AccuFund, and it's extremely expensive to go to another operating system as far as finance. And then we're still back to the same problem, and that's training. Training and knowledge is key, and in fact, our assistant, well, also because she's been to the a Casell course here recently, and but it's our problem isn't the software; it's the humans operating it or not putting information in.
And you've had experience with the program, and in that experience, can it work?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if I might add, through the mayor, this company is extremely familiar and works with Casell.
Thank you.
So there's a comfort level there. I don't want any hiccups for anybody.
That was exactly the answer I was looking for, because it's this annual fee that we pay for to be able to utilize, what is it, $54,000 a year or something that we pay for the rights to use that system?
I can't comment on the price, or the annual contract,
what I'm
but it's
getting,
expensive.
if we outsource this, even on the daily basis, like what you were saying, it would seem like if they have Casell, the CPA firm that we're using, if they have Casell, why do we need it?
Because, well, through the mayor, if I may clarify, we're paying to operate it and have backup in their source. The CPAs just use it as a tool. They don't manage or support our system. They just use it to manage money. So we have two distinct, issues there.
All right. It just appears, it seems to me that that's a lot of money to be paying out.
I don't disagree.
Okay. All right.
I don't disagree.
We're both in agreement on that. And after 6 months, then maybe perhaps we will have a better idea of how to permanently resolve our difficulties.
I'm hoping sooner.
Okay.
I think Al and we'll all sleep a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to the Harbor Master report, Kyle, you're recommending to begin repair of the city dock. Is there do we have a condition on that?
I just brought that up for discussion. What I'm proposing now, and I talked to Jim this morning at the meeting, and we're going to have a full assessment and evaluation to see what condition it is first before we make any rush decisions on anything, and go from there. So.
All right. Thank you.
Are we open for questions?
Well, I misunderstood I thought there was a recommendation, but basically before we go further, we need to have an assessment.
Correct. I just brought it up as there's a possibility that we're going to have to do something with it, but it's not a recommendation to do something right now.
Okay. All right.
Well, excuse me, can we have a question?
Sure, absolutely.
I was curious. I'd previously asked you before, what was the name of the vessel that damaged the dock, and you didn't know at the time. Do you know now?
It's Evermore. That is the DeLong dock, not the city dock.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Sorry. I know it's off top.
It's the Evermore, yes.
There.
Yeah, it's the Evermore.
Okay, thank you. And I have some money. I have some questions. I'm sorry about grant. We'll bring that. I can bring that up later in this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Did we skip the assistant manager's report?
No, we did not. Did you have a question for Annie?
No, not specifically. I didn't hear the report acknowledged.
There was definitely no. Annie, did you have? Okay, so moving on, Chief Russell would like to add something to his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I'd like to, before I get started, to introduce you to someone in the guest in the public area right now that maybe you didn't realize was here. Somebody that I've had the pleasure of working with over in Girdwood. Mike Edgington is with the Girdwood Board of Supervisors. I've enjoyed working with him, and I wanted to make sure that you were aware that he was here today. And I'd also like to begin by telling you there's been a long-standing relationship between police and fire. And sometimes, being a policeman, I have to ask the question, why did God make firemen? Okay, here's the answer. Because police need heroes too, okay? We really do. The police and the firefighters have always enjoyed a long-standing and friendly bantering back and forth. But truth be told, they are some of the finest people in the world, and I'm happy to introduce one of you tonight. I'd like to introduce you to, if you haven't already known him, his name is Brian Hicks. Brian Hicks began his public safety career in firefighting all the way back in 1996 when he was a firefighter in Escambia County, Florida. Over the course of the next years, he's held all sorts of various positions up to and including his current assistant fire chief for the Girdwood Tunnel. Is that correct, Brian? I think so too. Well, we get to recognize him for something a little bit further. In accordance with the code, firefighters, our volunteer firefighters, select a chief. That name is passed on up to the Director of Public Safety, and the Public Safety appoints a volunteer fire chief. I'd like to do that tonight. Today we're here for a swearing-in ceremony of the Whittier Volunteer Fire Chief, Brian Hicks. He's a firefighter, a member of the world's most honored but dangerous occupations. When there's an emergency in the community, firefighters are one of the first on the scene. They're at devastating ravages of fire, motor vehicle accidents, tornadoes, hazardous material incidents, rescue operations, explosions, medical emergencies, and many other crucial incidents that affect us. Firefighters are civil servants, but they're also sworn officers, following standard policies and procedures of the fire service and the standard operating procedures of their department. They are here, they are there to prevent human suffering and death, to stabilize an incident and prevent damages and the loss of property. It's a great honor to have this opportunity now to swear in Whittier Volunteer Fire Chief Brian Hicks. And with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to invite him forward to be sworn in. Will you raise your right hand and repeat after me? State your name.
Brian Hicks.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
And the state of Alaska.
And the state of Alaska.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Both foreign and domestic.
Both foreign and domestic.
And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge.
And that I will faithfully and impartially discharge.
My duties as a volunteer fire chief.
My duties as a volunteer fire chief.
Of the Whittier Department of Public Safety.
Of the Whittier Department of Public Safety.
According to the laws and regulations.
According to the laws and regulations.
Of the city of Whittier, Alaska.
Of the city of Whittier, Alaska.
To the best of my skills and abilities.
To the best of my skills and abilities.
To protect the safety and lives.
To protect the safety and lives.
Of the citizens.
Of the citizens.
And firefighters.
And firefighters.
Whose care has been entrusted to me.
Whose care has been entrusted to me.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And keep me steadfast.
And keep me steadfast.
Every sworn person should have a badge, and I'd like to present you with yours.
Thank you.
I'd also like to present you with your new helmet as fire chief.
Thank you very much.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you for the very first time, radio call sign Fire 1.
Thank you. Congratulations, Brian. Do we have any questions for Public Works? Moving on to commissions. Looks like we have a report for Parks and Rec. Did you want to add something or
I mean, we forgot a couple things on the list there, but this pretty much represents some of the stuff that we've done this last year to date.
I had a question. It's very remarkable amount of time that Parks and Rec put in. And in the 96 volunteer days, what constitutes a day? Is that 8 hours or?
It's anywhere from 3 to 8 hours a day.
So the 96 days, that's people, during, right, yeah, explain that further.
It was a lot of work, and congratulations.
I don't know if this says, the dollar amount, if we were to pay for that labor, it was a substantial amount of money. I can't remember when we figured it out, but it was thousands and thousands of dollars.
We used to get, any trail repair is always appreciated, but I think we used to, and we probably still do apply for these grants, but it's about $5,000. And it's just a tiny piece of what you guys are accomplishing. So it's, And that's just the hours. I understand that there's contribution of blood as well, so, and that's priceless. Anyway, probably, well, certainly the most successful Parks and Rec summer. Last year was great, and this is building on success. Congratulations to Parks and Rec. So, moving on to citizens' comments on agenda items not scheduled for public hearing. Oh, sorry, Mike, I did, yeah, please, no, there's no hurry, I just, I didn't see yet, sorry. I saw Kelly.
That's the story of my life.
Deborah, did you have a question?
Kyle has.
Oh, Kyle? Thank you, Mike. I went on one of those, I think it was the 25th anniversary, and it was very interesting. And on that one, they gave you a souvenir bottle of oil. So, just to put on your shelf and collect dust. Moving on to resolutions.
Citizens' comments.
It's for Is what you're going to talk about, is it an agenda item?
No.
Okay, so we're going to have...
KMTA board member who was just awarded the Parks and Rec a grant.
Okay, so we have citizens discussion. Did you want it as a presentation?
No, just to let you know that we have the Kenai Mountain Running and Arm Historical Society has awarded the Parks and Rec a $9,000 grant for what they're doing with the Horsetail Falls Information Center.
Okay, so this is Parks and Rec.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Working at 2 Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you,
They
Karen.
wrote a nice grant, and we're happy to award it to them.
Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't see that. If you were trying to speak during the Parks and Rec Commission, I apologize. I just didn't see you. But you got it now.
Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have missed this, but I don't recall the council approving the minutes.
Yes.
We did. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So I'd ask for a motion approving resolutions.
Hearing on these resolutions before you approve them?
Just a motion. We're just having a motion.
And then we'll have a discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
You have Daleen read the resolution first, or do we just...
Daleen, Madam Clerk, would you please read the first resolution?
Resolution 23-2018, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Whittier, Alaska, appropriating $48,000 of the General Fund or Harbor Reserve Fund for the purpose of providing shoreline protection located in the Whittier Harbor Basin at latitude 60.771 degrees north, longitude 148.6927 degrees west, Whittier, Alaska.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 23-2018.
Discussion.
We'd already okayed most of this. There wasn't a quorum at the last special meeting, so that's why this is coming up again.
I wasn't, I had to work that day.
Informing you, that's what it's for.
Okay. Peter.
Recuse from this conversation and vote.
At the special meeting, it was voted on, passed. So we're doing it again because there wasn't a quorum for the vote with the recusal.
Copy. So, I had a couple of questions. I don't know. Scott? So the first question is, will the repair shore up the leaning light in that area?
The leaning light was removed at the beginning of the summer. It got to be dangerous or a hazard.
Okay. And then the portion of erosion repair that we're talking about was part of the original repair, it was supposed to be part of that original repair that was done in front of the harbor master's office?
No, Mayor, it was never included in the contract. What you see before you is a permit, an original permit set that went to there. It was never designed completely or permitted by the Corps. Mark Ernst is circa 2009 when that construction was going on, or the construction was going to begin. That would have been an amendment to the harbor project, the current rebuild that we're doing. That would have taken a whole new EIS and hazardous study as well as geotechnical study, and it was decided at that time not to pursue it because it would have delayed the harbor rebuild project.
Okay, because there was, seems like when we put in those sheet piles that we encountered some 1964 earthquake oil or contamination, and we stopped. We stopped sooner than we wanted to.
That is incorrect, Mayor. The construction that happened for the sheet pile was only what was permitted. There was no permit issued for anything beyond the city dock.
So we didn't stop early. We got everything.
No, we completed everything according to the Corps permit.
Okay. Is this going to, it's just the erosion around, as I'm facing the boat lift area, it's the erosion on the left?
Correct, sir. It picks up at the travel lift, and it proceeds over to just behind the restroom facility. The project is sized not to go beyond the nationwide discharge permit through the Corps. It is small enough that it can be just done administratively without engineering design and study. So this is just an emergency repair.
Okay, is it going to, are we going to have any opportunity to have kayak launch capability when you get done with the repair?
We are repairing the ramp there. There may be some able to leave an access point to permit kayak launching, but that is something we'll have to look at during construction.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Peter?
And Scott, before you leave, I'm going to ask the same question I did at the last meeting, because this is happening right on the north side of lots 11 and 13 Harbor View, which are lots owned by Alaska Sea Kayakers, which is me. And the erosion problem goes further than
Council, if I may address that, the area that Mr. Denmark or Councilman Denmark is referring to is directly behind Rodeo Marine Charters. In 2009, under Matt Abbey and Mark Ernst, the city manager and the assistant city manager at that time, there was a lease reduction in that area due to minor erosion going on in that area, some minor sloughing that occurred. The vegetation has grown up around there, and it's continually monitored by myself and also by Matt Kopak, the proprietor of Whittier Marine Charters. We haven't noticed any more addition or any more erosion control or erosion issues going on in that location. It seems to have stabilized. With that being said, the source with the Corps in doing this, we are allowed 1/10 of an acre under this. The major impact and the major erosion that is going on currently is behind Alaska Sea Kayakers. There's exposed electrical lines, there's exposed phone lines, we had a leaning light standard over there. If you look into your packet and you can see the pictures of what's exposed there. So this is a situation that needs to be addressed immediately. So with that presence, we took it to vote before the court. They agreed with us, and we had a core permit within 9 calendar days. 2 of those days were the weekend, and 2 of the days I had previous obligations. I couldn't work on it. So we actually got a core permit in 5 days, from date of phone call to receiving the permit in hand. They've been a wonderful source to work with, a wonderful source of information.
So is staying within the scope of less than 1/10 of an acre, does that make it easier for us?
Under the nationwide permit, yes it does, sir.
Any other questions?
So for the council members that were here, we have crews on site doing work readily available to do contracting for us. They are under contract. They did give us a really good price in this. They're producing the materials locally, so the riprap and the drainage blanket will be from a local source here in Whittier. So we are saving a tremendous amount of money by capitalizing on this advantage right now that we have. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott. Peter?
And just to follow up from all that was said at the special meeting, as was mentioned by Councilor Herman, this is an erosion mitigation exercise only. This does not reclaim real estate. It stops the erosion.
Okay. Karen?
Yes, and Scott, when I was looking out my window at this area, the city dump trucks were backing up right next to the city dock and dumping the snow. And then when it dumped in, it was eroding, and it also broke some of the slats off the city dock. And then the water backlash, you know, when you slap your hand in a pool, and then the water backlash. So I think we've got to be careful to let your people know, find someplace else to dump besides right there at the city area, otherwise you're just going to mess it up again.
Okay.
And, you know, that's just an ounce of prevention prevents a lot more money going out. The other thing is you $48,000. If you sell one unit up on the 15th floor, sell it for $55,000. You won't have to take from either the harbor or your general fund. And I think you can, apartments have been selling very rapidly, but you can just get it out there on the market, and if it comes through, then you've got your money without having to dip into either the harbor or your general fund.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, hearing no further discussion, call for a vote.
Calling for a vote, Dave Dickinson.
Yes.
Monty Irvin.
Yes.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott, because when you got that material here, it probably would have cost twice as much. Did a great job.
Madam Clerk, would you read the next resolution?
Resolution 24-2018, a resolution by the City Council, the Whittier City Council, authorizing a payment of no more than $10,000 from the general fund to Information Insights, Inc. for the economic analysis for borough feasibility study proposal for Prince William Sound Borough between Girdwood, the Girdwood Governance Association, the City of Cordova, and the City of Whittier.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 24-2018.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Peter.
I am far from approving of the formation of a borough under this format. And this resolution, where it makes sense to me, is the information that may be derived from an economic development analysis may serve us going down the road, regardless of any future action towards creating a borough.
Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Also, is this, we had mentioned that we would participate in a study as long as Cordova, we don't want to be the only ones participating. And is this worded strongly enough to make that happen?
Through the mayor, Councilman, yes, and Cordova has agreed, and there will be a public meeting held, if I remember correctly, it's going to be the evening of the 20th in Cordova, and everybody's invited to go if you want to fly down there quickly. Like I said, they have agreed to participate, and I agree with the councilman that there are more benefits to this than meets the eye that we can use.
So it came before us. Mr. Hunt hunted down what our maximum our city manager match unrestricted expenses is $5,000. And where I got confused is some of our city credit cards are set for $10,000, which is, anyway, we've got some work to do as far as straightening out all of that. But so I asked for it to be on tonight's agenda.
I just had a question about how funding this feasibility study is going to work. Is are Girdwood and Cordova going to pay more because they're larger communities?
Well, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Girdwood is kind of spearheading it, and I think they're paying. Cordova was 20,000. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
And then so I guess Girdwood's contribution is like 24,000. So they're making up the difference. We invited Valdez to participate, and they declined.
I think it's very important to make the distinction between Girdwood, the town, the community itself, and Girdwood Governance Association, which is not a governmental body and has no authority. It is a private citizens group, and it's
yeah. I apologize. It's Girdwood is GVVA.
GGA, Girdwood Governance Association.
Yeah. Okay, it's the GGA is throwing in 34,000. Karen.
I've got several serious concerns.
Oh, wait.
Just about this. I'm talking about this.
Okay.
I looked up
I'm going to hold you to 3 minutes, Karen. I'm going to hold you to 3 minutes.
Okay, I looked up Information Insights. Their core focus is on public health and public policy. The key person that's listed here as Jamie Hansen. Her background is international studies and an MA in Arab studies. This is a person, I don't even know why you're using these people to begin with. And secondly, when I went through the Division of Community and Regional Affairs, they're citing the Alaska Constitution, which basically says boroughs based on standards such as natural, geographic boundaries, economic viability, and common interests. And I heard a wag from Girdwood say the only thing all of these communities have in common is the European black slug. So that's another thing to think about.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
And I don't mean to step on anybody's toes, but this is improper procedure here.
Okay.
Aren't we discussing whether or not you want to spend money and give money to this group? And I'm saying maybe a little more research.
This is just
who's going to do your...
Karen, this is a resolution, and it's on the table.
Right, this is a council discussion.
And you're going to either pass it or not pass it, correct? And this is comment on whether I'm suggesting you not pass it for a lot of reasons.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate your concern. Please sit down.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions from council?
Comment, question? We're going to have a discussion after after vote or what?
We haven't voted yet.
Right, I know, yeah, so
Victor has
we can discuss it.
Victor has a question.
Victor?
Could be a comment or a question. I was reading the commercial passenger vessel excise tax for fiscal years 2007 to 2016, and there is a section in there that says if a city is in a borough, they will share half of their cruise ship passenger excise tax dollars with the borough. I was wondering if that was still in effect.
That's part of what this study's supposed to do. I mean, there are a lot of interesting things that are going to come about. You know, one of them is the possibility of a land grant to the borough to help fund this. The state's wants to see all organized boroughs versus unorganized boroughs. But what this study is not. It's just to answer the economic part, as well as there are more. Anyway, there's the economic part is primarily what they're trying to answer, and if they do their job well, they will bring that up. So,
okay, thank you.
I see this as a disadvantage already, spending money for another layer of government, but we can take it from there.
Well, it's we are putting in $10,000 of a $54,000 study, and sometimes information gained by the group that the GGGA did their due diligence in getting I believe, an excellent group to do this study. It's essentially pennies on the dollar, and it will allow us to essentially make more informed decisions whether or not to move forward. And given recent economic events, it'd be more information, and accurate information will help us.
Help us what?
It will help us determine if this is, okay, what you're talking about are the cons, which is an extra layer of government. There are some advantages, and what we hope to have come out of this study is to have the advantages versus the disadvantages laid before us from an economic standpoint.
Well, they should pay us then, rather than we pay them.
And, okay. Any other comments, questions?
This is another note about the notion of a borough, and I will reiterate, I am a long way from thinking that this is a good idea. But the Alaska Constitution mandates that the unincorporated borough shall create boroughs in time. There's no time frame, there's no pressure, but it is mandated by the state constitution. So any exploration somewhere down the road, down the line, it's going to happen. And we tried this once 15 years ago, and it didn't fly. This is a different format. Don't know that it's better or that it's for worse, but boroughization in some form will impact Whittier in its future sometime. And it's just, to me, it looks like an inexpensive way to learn something.
Why did Valdez opt out?
They want nothing to do with it because they're the population center. Their preference 15 years ago was to join the North Star Borough.
Thanks for the information. Appreciate it. And now there's a turf war between Anchorage and Girdwood, or Girdwood
Girdwood's in the Muni right now, so this is a rebellion from the municipality of Anchorage on Girdwood's part.
Yeah, right, yeah, I can understand that, and they're kind of putting us into this, and I don't know.
I think it's a study. I don't think
we may become part of the Muni.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think this is a study. It's not a rebellion.
Well, yeah, it still costs money.
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to reiterate the point. This has absolutely nothing to do with the government of Girdwood. I'm an elected supervisor there, and there's no mandate from the population as a whole. There's no mandate from the broader citizens group. This is a small group of people who have an interest in doing this, a private citizens group. It's got nothing to do with the government. So every time you say Girdwood, you really should be specifying a group of about a dozen Girdwoodians.
Yeah, thank you for that information. That's great.
There are larger numbers of people who support it in principle, but it's being driven by about a dozen individuals, not by the government at any level.
So I was using the wrong term, GGA?
GGA is the right thing, but that's a private group of about a dozen people who are running that.
All right, thanks for that clarification. Hearing no further discussion, I call for a vote.
Calling for a vote. Dave Dixon.
Yes.
Peter Denmark.
Yes.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
Monty Irvin.
No.
Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Moving on to DeLong Dock emergency repair. Do we have anything new to add to that?
Yeah. Is the insurance company going to pay for this?
We have just completed the assessment and evaluation of the damage as well as the assessment of the entire dock. We're waiting for that report to come back. It was just finished the day before yesterday because of the weather. Had held us down because of the wind and stuff. So once I get that, I'll give it back to the city manager and we'll have a better answer of what it's going to cost. As far as the assessment and the evaluation, the insurance company picked up the tab on everything except our $5,000 deductible. So that's all I can tell you at this point.
When you say they picked it up, we don't know what the repair is, but they're going to pick it up?
No, at this point, all they're paying for is $13,000 of the assessment evaluation. It was $18,000, and they have picked up all but $5,000 of that to do that. Once they know what once we know what the repairs are, then they'll do an assessment to see, because right now it's under the adjuster and the investigator for our insurance company as well as the insurance company of the vessel to decide who is what here. So, once we know all that, then I'll have a better answer for you.
Okay, before you walk all the way back to your table, we have unfinished business, Harbor Phase 3 construction. Is there anything new to add to that?
Not at this point. I think we're just going to hold tight to see where we're at with budgets, see where we're at with everything, and look at it maybe next year, because right now, everything's in such a influx right now. We're doing repairs right now to make everything functional and operational until we can get a better handle of where we're at.
Okay. I believe the term is Tier 2 state grant. Did we apply for that for 2019?
We have not applied for it yet.
Is there still a window of opportunity to do that?
I hope there is. I do not know. I will check it.
Okay, because every little bit helps.
That's correct. I'll be working with Jim and Annie to get this accomplished.
Okay, I think there is a deadline, so if we could, Mr. Noss might know the answer to that. Make sure we get that in. It's we end up getting really high on the list because we put so much of our own funds in it. So we have a pretty successful formula, and I'd like to take advantage of that. Thank you, Kyle.
I have a question.
Okay.
We got $100,000 for 2017. Is that right?
From the railroad?
Yeah.
We got $150,000 from the railroad setting an account for the DeLong dock, yes.
And then in 2018, how much in fees have we got?
We're still waiting for everybody to come in, but there's, I'll have to give you the figures next time because I do not have the actual figures yet.
All right. Do you think that, I don't like to bring this up that much, but there's that fishing in this town has a long history of people going bankrupt around here, and I'm just hoping that if there are bills out there to be paid, that they get done in a timely fashion.
We're working.
I think by the next meeting that we should be.
We will have answers for you by the next meeting. I can assure you that, yes.
Thank you.
On the DeLong dock, were we going to create an enterprise fund for the DeLong dock?
An enterprise fund separate from the small boat harbor.
Right. Yeah. Will that be part of the new budget then? I guess that's part of the new budget.
Yeah, that would be. And there's some also other, we're looking at, leasing parcels, 5 years to 10 years. So, the vendors, contractors, businesses will know exactly where they are and take ownership in it. And that would likely encourage Chugach to upgrade the electrical all the way out. There's a lot of benefits to it.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay, new business, interim city manager contract. I think get that.
Mr. Mayor, if I will provide a little information. What was handed out is the old agreement, the old contract. I still have not received the draft back from the firm. Could anticipate it any day, but I haven't received it back. But, on your advice, to print it out, at least, all the council can have the old one. It's going to be virtually identical.
So the only thing that we added to this contract was 5 days of holiday. Correct. Is that right?
Over the period, the whole period that I'm here. Yes.
For the year of 2018.
And if I remember right, I also inserted, which will be for your review, January, reconsideration and direction when we decide, what to do.
Okay.
So for review at the end of the year into January.
Okay. And at 5 days of holiday brings us to our, so as far as that contract, Jim, do we need to do something now, or do you recommend we wait for the one from Jennifer?
We can wait.
Okay.
I'm contractually obligated in many ways.
Okay.
One thing, compensation and benefits, 241.3 1 month guarantee. So this is a good clause to have in there. 30 days, we find another manager to replace you, we're going to pay for the entire month.
What about
if you leave before a month is up, say it was on the 2nd of a month, and you decide to walk off the job, do we have to pay you for that month?
No, it's the next one, 2.4.1.4 talks about the prorated pay. That first month, I didn't know we were actually interviewing 2 city managers, and Jim was gracious enough to come on board as quick as he did. I said, regardless, we're going to pay you 30 days, and that's what that was about. So we're through with that.
Yeah, I would just still have some heartburn about like the way the council manager and whatnot. But anyway, that's water under the bridge.
I have a question. Under section 3.1, is there any compensation if he is terminated by the council? Like in 2-week compensation if he's terminated by the council for no cause, with or without cause?
This is 3.1?
Yeah.
This is an interim city manager contract, okay? And his compensation is outlined in 2.4.1.4 in terms of prorated pay. So, Jim, do you?
No, wait, Mr. Mayor, yeah.
Okay, I see it, thank you.
I'm basically an at-will contract employee. Anytime, every 3 weeks, or any special session, I'm 4 votes away. Without severance, there's no severance clause in that. I think that's what we're looking for. Okay, you're welcome.
So we're going to wait for the complete written contract. I put it on here. One, I wanted to show council that I tried to get something, and I believe Jim's happy with the contract. The only change was 5 days of holiday. And if you guys had any feedback on that, I'm here to listen. But other than that, Jim's going to be here. Peter?
One question, when we first started up, Jim, you were going to be spending 3 days a week in Whittier?
Through the mayor, I am spending more than that now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if I may, I closed on my condo today, so renovation forthcoming.
Are you with us 5 days a week during business hours at this stage?
Work-wise, yes. In presence, no. But I think for the most part, I've been here through Thursdays.
Okay, Dan, do you have a set weekly schedule on the days that you were here?
Well, initially it was Monday through Wednesday, is kind of what we're looking at, and also working at home. And now I've been extending that now into Thursdays, and anticipate, getting here and working 5 days a week, just as soon as I can.
Thank you.
I'd like to stop commuting tomorrow.
And then dividing up the workload, how is that going right now? Do you have a strategy for dividing up the workload with the rest of administration?
I think they've been doing a great job. It's also been an education process for me, familiarize. I'm still, drinking out of the fire hose. There's a lot of history here, a lot of personalities, and but I think we're just about ready to start corralling the cats with this new CPA firm. That's going to be a huge load off of us.
Okay, so those 5 holidays, Jim essentially had a holiday scheduled prior to the phone call that he received from us, and we asked for him to be an interim city manager. And those days, of course, conflict with our October regular meeting. And I would really like it if we could have continuity with the city manager, as in each regular meeting we have Jim on board. So I put this on new business in hopes that we could come up with a date that council could attend, and we could have our regular meeting with our interim city manager. I think communication has, it's the most important part of his job. With his staff and with us. So.
Mr. Mayor, may I have a little input? I fly back from my fishing trip on the 23rd, so maybe we could have it on the 24th, but maybe the 30th would be a little better, because I can catch up.
Nayleen, is that the council meeting where we elect officers?
It is, yes, it will be, yes. Yes.
So as long as we hold a regular meeting, as long as we officially change that schedule, we're fine. So is either the 29th or the 30th, Peter?
No problem with the dates, but we're also fast approaching budget time, and we are mandated to have a budget finished essentially by the end of the year. Given our current circumstances with our existing budget, are we going to be in any position to begin discussing a new budget at the end of October? Will old issues be in large part rectified? Or can they be?
The Mayor, by the end of October, I believe that's a reach. However, that doesn't preclude us from working off with the old budget and also working with the directors, and anticipating what is coming and whether there might be an increase or decrease. So we're not bound over, in a void where we can't make a decision. We can make a decision and move forward with the budget. As you all know, it is a framework, but we can get just as absolutely close as we possibly can with or without that information.
Thank you for an honest answer.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, how's the 16th of October?
I think Jim is, the 16th of October, Jim is on a boat. So what I was hoping was to have we can still have an official, we changed our code so that we can still have an official regular meeting as long as we talk about it today and we all agree. So did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I do try and have it, and council can disagree with me. I think it's really important for us to, at this stage, to have the captain of the boat here. So we can certainly keep it on the 16th. I'd like to encourage us to have it either on the 29th or the 30th. And that's why I put it on here. It's before council. Is there anyone that's going to create a hardship for? Is there a preference, Victor?
The week of the 22nd to 26th it's good for me.
That 22nd is before Jim lands here.
I said the week.
Pardon?
I said the week of the 22nd to 26th is a good window.
The 26th, I'm not going to be present.
Yeah, he works through Wednesday through the end of the week.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm available on the 31st, but I think Deborah has problems with Wednesdays, so. Are you going to be available, Victor, on the 29th or the 30th?
Can't really answer that right now.
Okay. Anyway, We can have it on the 16th. I just, my gut feeling is we're getting used to each other, and I'd like to ask council's indulgence.
And having it the week before?
On the 9th?
Yes. Does that help?
Jim? Naileen?
So on the 9th, we will have a special meeting to certify the election. If you want to schedule the regular meeting on that, we could just put the certification of the election on the regular agenda.
Yeah, I'm actually not going to be in the state on the 9th. I'm going to be, I guess that would be a problem for me. I wasn't going to be able to make that special meeting. So we can have it on the 16th or the 29th or the 30th or the 31st. Or, yeah. Actually, I can have it on the 24th. I can't have it on the 31st.
I'm just one person. I think you could probably establish a quorum without me.
Okay. Jim, did you say it would be better for you to have it on the following week, the 29th or the 30th?
I would ask so because I'm not going to have any internet service out in the Pacific.
Okay, so
I would vote for the 30th then.
Okay, the 30th it is. Do you want it at 7 or 6 or?
So we got 7.
Okay. Peter?
Okay, so that's going to be essentially 6 weeks before we have another regularly scheduled meeting with a special meeting on the 9th to certify the election, presumably. So, and then we're going into, that'll be taking us into November. We have an interim city manager still working with a short staff. I don't know if this is the appropriate time in the meeting to bring this up, but with this gap in regular meetings, perhaps it would behoove us to set some short-term goals going forward here to the end of the year so we're not surprising ourselves and tripping over our own shoelaces at the end of October. I think the city staff is pretty well focused, but if any counselor has any specific ideas about directions we should be taking, it's going to be a while before we meet again and should speak their piece this evening.
So are you suggesting a workshop on the 16th, or what are you suggesting?
I am suggesting for all that are interested in providing input to do so. One thing that has been discussed in the wake of this recent transition is our goal-setting policy. We set our lofty annual goals, state, local, and federal. We have administrative goals to accomplish here in the next few months. And so I guess I will ask Mr. Hunt, input from council helpful here, or you guys know where we're going?
Well, we know what our first priority is that we're working on as far as finances. I do know that we're going to, working together, we need to identify our state and federal priorities, based on what's going to be available in Juneau.
That's an annual.
And then also with the budget, we know that is, coming up fast. And we're going to have to address that too, whether we have the information at hand, as I said before, or we go off of last year and build on that framework. But I see some special sessions coming up, so we can hammer this out, and/or work sessions. It's just not going to be weeks and weeks of silence and inactivity. Correct? Staff, directors? Okay.
Dan, don't worry about considering a training schedule. There's an election coming up in my seat, so I may or may not be here.
I have the utmost confidence that you will be. Don't get excited. You're going nowhere. Can we move on to item C on new business?
Yes. So, according to code, exactly 1 week after the election, the city council has to hold a special meeting to certify the election. So that's what that's there for.
Okay. Excellent. Moving into council discussion. Peter.
I have rather a laundry list.
Yeah, it seems like all of us do.
You want to take a break before I begin?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thanks for the invitation, Peter. I'd ask for us to reconvene. Jim Hunt's going to be leaving us on the 9 o'clock tunnel, so if we could get as far through our council discussion, that would be great.
There's another thing about that too.
So,
But I don't know.
Peter, did you have something that you wanted to discuss in council?
I do. Like I said, I have a little bit of a laundry list here.
Okay, can we hit the high points? And I mean, it looks like this one's pretty important, the Hunter thing. And
this is going to be part of it, and I think this is presented as a function of a conversation I had with Chief Russell this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, so this will be a component, and I'll save that for my last point, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, the reason that I have voted not to approve the agenda in the last two meetings is after a year and a half of conversation, I have constantly banged the drum about the need for the development of administrative policies and recodification. Our code has been defined by our attorney as incomplete, conflicting, and subjective. This led and a goal. I know a few minor strides have been taken. This is the first best thing that we can do for the city of Whittier, for the future, for future councils, for future administrations. So I would like to see that as a priority on our agenda, please, after a year and a half, and I will continue to sing this tune. That's my first point. Given public concern in the correspondences that have been forwarded to all of us as counselors regarding the build grant, I'm going to ask for council support at this meeting to direct the administration to develop an administrative report on how we missed our opportunity to apply for the build grant. I don't see any excuse. There was no guaranteed money there, but there's no excuse for us to have missed that opportunity. There's a couple of tunes being sung out there as to how this occurred. I would like the administration to let us know exactly what happened. A significant opportunity was lost. So I would ask, Mayor, if you don't mind polling the council to direct the administration to develop a report on how we managed to not apply for that grant.
Council, I'm asking for consensus on this topic. If a yes for me. Do you have any no's?
If it's a straw poll, yeah, sure, you do it.
Okay.
Okay, and Jim, does that serve as appropriate direction to have such a report formulated by the time we meet again in 6 weeks?
Yes, so noted.
Thank you. A couple of these points we hit in the middle of the meeting, so Dan, I am going to jump to this last handout that we were given. It's a section of our code titled Weapons. And I would like probably Chief Russell an answer to why it is appropriate to hunt bears in the city limits in a recreational park by an individual in a city vehicle who had been tracking this bear around town, last of the great white hunters, in the city limits. In this chapter of our code, under section 932.040B, that hunting permits can be allowed by the Public Safety Department. Whether a permit was issued or not, I don't know. Hopefully that will be cleared up this evening. But section B, the permit shall provide that no hunting is permitted within 1/2 mile of any commercial or industrial structure or within 1/4 mile of the shoulder of Shotgun Cove Road to the stream known as Second Salmon Run. This bear was killed in First Salmon Run with a bow and an arrow. It was not a defense in life or property killing. So, Chief Russell, I would ask you, is how appropriate was this action?
Mr. Denmark, through the mayor, I'd like to address this particular issue. Part of the information that you are representing to the council is correct, part of it is incorrect, and I'd like to begin by correcting the incorrect. Number one is that no city vehicle was utilized in the harvesting of any game within the city, period. Any kind of violation of city policy or procedure by a city employee or by a member of the public at large would not be appropriate for me to discuss in open court or open session. If you'd like to move into executive session, would be happy to address any personnel or private matter pertaining to a violation of city code, whether we're talking about, again, a city employee or a member at large. It would not be appropriate for me to address this. This particular code has to deal with the hunting and the taking of a game inside the city limits. You're absolutely correct that this code does address the issuance of a permit, but if you read the rest of the ordinance, it says that a permit can't even be issued until after October the 1st. There's a timeline restricting that. You're correct in identifying the areas that would be governed by this particular code. 1/4 mile Shotgun Road, all the way out to Second Salmon Run, which is beyond the construction area right now. So the taking of a game, even if it was in accordance with state statute or hunting ordinances, may be in violation of a city ordinance. And there's, again, much more that I would be happy to discuss in an executive session as opposed to open session here. The answer to your question about whether or not a violation of a city ordinance or a state statute or an administrative code by any employee or a city member is not acceptable. And again,
my question is unacceptable?
No. The violation of the city ordinance or administrative code is unacceptable. And that would include anything from speeding to DUI to failing to stop at a stop sign or anything else like that. It's not acceptable that you turn a blind eye to any violation of a city code or administration or anything else like that. But I can tell you unequivocally that in this particular instance that no city vehicle was used in the harvesting of any game, in this particular matter or any other game.
Okay, and then I don't know if you guys are hearing it, there's a bit of an uproar about this. A great number of the bear population here is an integral part of the community, and it makes Whittier what it is to some degree. If a DLP killing, a defense of life or property killing is necessary, so be it. It's been done here, and it's always been done by the police department over the years. And whether you agreed with a move or not, that's always who did it. This is a different circumstance. This was not a problem bear. I saw him get into the trash over at Major Marine, but he's been a bit of an attraction around town for the last month as well. I have bumped into him numerous times in my small wanderings around the bay here. Never an aggressive move, and all the person has to do is handle themselves appropriately around it, and he was perfectly content on doing his daily chores.
May I speak to that point?
Please.
That opinion would be conflicting with Alaska Department of Fish and Game and their belief and their perception that once a person or a bear becomes habituated to getting in the garbage, that it in fact does become a public safety issue, and that in Girdwood alone, on one of the streets that was there, that they actually had to dispatch 6 bears, 3 in one day, for doing this exact same thing of getting into garbage and becoming habituated. Bears' lifestyle, their practice is that once they start getting a reward of calorie rewards of getting food, they're going to come back time and time again. That's why bear-resistant dumpsters and the such are effective, because they deny that calorie reward. But once they start getting into the garbage and once they start getting food there, they're going to come back to that food source. The dumpster here, the one over at Smitty's, Smitty's Cove, and the trash that is being strewn up and down the trail would substantiate that. So they may look friendly, but once they start getting into the garbage, then they do become an issue.
I am speaking for the general community about allowing the bears to thrive in town. I do not believe this bear was habituated to garbage, though he did get into Major Marine garbage, as I did witness. It was small. It is a sow and 2 cubs that have been getting into the dumpsters around town. It's a different bear. And this issue has nothing to do with a habituated bear. This is about what was been described as a legal hunt. Okay. Was a permit allowed to the individual who shot this bear?
No permit was issued, nor could it have been issued, because it was outside of the calendar.
Okay, so I really would like to hear the nuts and bolts of this, and if it drives us into executive session, I would support that once we get through citizen council discussion, so it's amidst us, if you would like. So I will leave that to the discretion of the rest of the council. If you would like to hear the nuts and bolts and details of this, there is more afoot here than meets the eye, I think.
So, Jim, when you leave, can Annie take us into executive session, or is that
we can't do executive session.
Can we do an executive session without being on the agenda? Okay, so we could probably put that on the October 9th.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, then I would like to request on whether October 9th is a special meeting to certify an election. And I don't know if this item is appropriate to that meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I might, again, I can go back and assure Mr. Denmark and the rest of the council that the violation of a city ordinance would be, again, something that may be appropriately discussed in an executive session. But as far as the major tenet, I believe, of Mr. Denmark's concern, as far as to whether or not city vehicles were being used, city time being used, city resources being used for the hunting or harvesting of any game inside the city limits, I can assure you they were not.
Okay. I have gotten information that was contrary to what we discussed this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay? And that's where that's coming from.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so we'll get that, Nalene, if you would, please. Okay.
And I have one more follow-up point, and then I will step back here.
Okay.
I got a couple issues were presented to me this afternoon by a couple local citizens, and it has to do with our shooting range. I believe we have in our ordinance that a permit is required to go up and target practice at the shooting range at the head of the bay. This ordinance, policy ordinance,
city ordinance,
has been administered many different ways with changing administrations. And the calls that came to me today were by an individual, and on that individual's behalf, that they had gone in to get the permit but then we're told that they had to get a permit every day that they want to go in. And I get it. And I wanted to share that a couple of previous police chiefs, all they wanted, you go in and you get your permit, and then when you want to go up to the range, to please call the PD and announce your intent or ask for permission. And as long as the police officers know that there are people up there shooting at the head of the bay, they know not to respond to any reports of gunfire in the area. And the point that I'm trying to accomplish here, the people who use the range up there are predominantly locals. And is there any way to revert to a more casual permission to use the shooting range than a daily written permission? So yes or no question?
I think that it's interesting for a casual response as opposed to a formalized response. The purpose behind the formalized response is to identify those that need to or would like to use that. It also gives us an opportunity to go over range rules and orient them to the range use. You might be surprised to know how many folks that are not residents of this area make special trips down here to use it because it is so convenient to use. Out-of-staters, folks traveling from the region or even coming in from the Anchorage Bowl like to come down here. And this gives an opportunity for them to meet with the officer. We've been very accommodating already rather than having them wait to meet with a police officer, especially if one was out of the area, let's say in Girdwood, attending a call, and rather than make them wait for the time to tone back in and get it, we've actually started a process where they can come up on the second floor during regular business hours and meet with the receptionist there, fill out the form. She gets the necessary information, relays it to the officers that are out in the field, so that we've already made those accommodations to make it more user-friendly. But as far as dialing it in and calling it in, I would not be opposed to that, and we could probably talk about that, but that's not the process that we're using right now.
Okay, so I, as Peter Denmark, if I want to go to the shooting range, I'm going to go get my safety lesson from a police officer, given permission to go use the target range on Tuesday, and then I decide that I want to try a new scope on my rifle on Wednesday, and I'm going to go back and have to go through the same process again.
That's the way that it's set up right now, but we both realize, and we both already know, that's not the way that's going to be handled. You're going to call in. You're going to identify yourself. You're going to say that you would like to go out onto the range. The person that's answering the phone, well, if they don't know you, which in this particular instance that you're referencing was not known to the person who took the call, and did not have the discretion to say, well, okay, because it's you, go right ahead. Rather, they explained the process and said that you need to come in. And that person, not only did they call you, but was rather rude to the person on the phone that was taking the call.
It was pretty rude to me, too.
And that never wins you friends, and especially since they don't know who you are. And so the person had really no other choice but to follow the procedure of saying, well, you need to come in. And it may have been inconvenient, but that was the process. And the person on the phone followed the process and took the tongue lashing that she didn't deserve. So we can be accommodating, and we have, and we'll work through the process, but the process is as the process is right now. They need to come in, and especially if they're unknown to the caller.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Victor.
Anyone who wants to use a gun range, do they need to pay for a permit or that pass, or is it free of charge?
It's free of charge. I can also tell you, Mr. Denmark, what we've done, because, we're using the dispatch service right now, and the calls come in and they're answered by our 24/7 dispatcher, was provided them with the form that we use, so that as they're taking the information over the phone, that they can be accommodating as well. We want to be accommodating. We're not trying to be contrary, nor are we trying to be exerting any unfair oversight. But it is a policy of the department, in accordance with the code, to issue the permit, and that's how we're trying to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have other council discussion?
Hey, Jim, quickly, before you go, did you have anything to say about derelict boat removal? Did you bring this up, or was that?
Well, it was brought to me.
Okay.
By Larry, and I think, Scott could provide some, he's got the input on the history, and probably in about 5 minutes, the ups and downs.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Can you wait till citizens discussion?
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to take the proper proceed.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Well, let the record reflect that Annie is now sitting in the manager seat. So, Councilman Dickinson has talked about the derelict boat cleanup operation that's being suggested by both the railroad and some of the private citizens trying to get some of these broken up boats picked up. And part of the discussion that we were hoping to have tonight is if the components that they're having trouble coming up with is hazmat material, which hazmat is primarily old fuel and dirty water that's basically coming out of the tanks, the fuel tanks. And I think Kyle has the capability to handle that. We're hoping to get a partnership going between the community, I think Joe Shen, Larry Gilman, and the railroad. And so there's the component of hazmat disposal and transportation, getting this, the hazmat transferred to out of town. And then there's I think the actual, we can't burn fiberglass and stuff, so that all of that, it's basically, Dan Jenkins is going to volunteer his, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a piece of equipment we're going to use to crush the boats down to make them transportable. That was, his excavator, and thanks, Victor. And anyway, it's going to be a group effort, and I was hoping to get council opinion on whether that's a worthwhile project.
Is this happening as a function of the nuisance ordinance? Or environmental hazards?
This has more of the function of beautification and removal of potentially, problem boats, I don't know if you know the Double Eagle, but it's essentially being compressed over time every time we have a heavy snow load. And there's probably several boats just like that. And you're going to have some kid that's going to go in there and explore and get hurt. It's just...
Does the city have the power to condemn those?
Okay. I'm not sure. That's a question for Mr. Hunt. But what we have here is essentially community members that are trying to pitch in labor and stuff and get them dealt. In other words, it's a volunteer versus it's the carrot and not the stick.
But the last time this came up, the issue emanated from the boat owners that the trash that we perceive were still considered treasure on their part.
These are no longer treasured.
That's a subjective judgment, but not that I don't.
The landowners will be happy. These boats are no longer paying rent, so the owners of those boats have absconded.
Then they can be condemned. Yes.
They're essentially the landowner's property because the people have abandoned them.
Yeah, and then I think by law that then becomes that lessor's responsibility.
We could go that route. What I was hoping for was to get buy-in from council that we encourage this cleanup effort.
I'm just rehashing history here and making sure that everybody knows what. The last time we tried to do this, the people who own the boat said, "No, I'm going to be fixing that boat."
Yeah, these boats are Kyle.
Man, they spoke to me about this. And this, I'm really glad they brought it up to you because it's derelict boats. There are 17 in the city, so it's part of the beautification for the city. It's part of derelict and abandonment, and so the property owners want to get together and work with us to try to clean the town up for one thing, get rid of these things. So that's I'm in full support of it, but and we have the means of getting rid of the hazardous waste, which is the oils and stuff, but we have to know in advance. We have to have a truck come in, and it's going to cost the harbor to do that, but we already do that anyway. So this would be just a means to help the city out as well.
I think it's a great idea. There's a couple layers to this that might need to be paid heed.
Well, one of the layers is if it's on private land, why doesn't the landowner take care of it?
I think the landowner, there is at least one landowner that is participating. So the story of how some of these boats get there can be long and sordid, but I mean, some of them were essentially sunk in the harbor, and a boat work person ended up at the request of the harbor removing this boat, and the boat had to be put somewhere, and so the owner of the boat's not there. If they got insurance for the sunken boat, they left with it.
If there's a concerted effort and the players with legal rights are in agreement, I think this is a long time coming and well overdue.
Okay. So, is council in agreement that this is a worthy? Okay, so the dollar amount that the city is we don't know those dollar amounts yet. I got a rough order of magnitude in terms of the estimated dirty water and fuel. I think it's like 1,000 gallons or less. And I want to say that Kyle, I think I remember the cost was like $3 or $4 a gallon. So, and it's something that we have the capability of doing. I would really like to encourage the city to participate. Victor.
I think, it's abandoned or derelict property that's on other people's property is the landowner's responsibility to dispose of it. It's their property. If we do offer assistance in disposing it, I would hope that we offer it. It's a fair, level playing field. It's offered to everybody, that this opportunity is available to anybody and everybody.
By all means, we want anybody that has I think junk is a nice word, that want to load up. The transportation is the other component. The railroad was more than happy to bring in a gondola, but the logistics of they don't want to provide the transportation once the gondola ends up in Anchorage to take it to the dump. And so anyway, there's some details that need to be worked out. What I was asking, and Councilman Dickerson was asking is are we on board with participating?
I do have a question. A few months ago, it's the diving team that go out and do the artificial reefs, and we had brought up the boats before, and they talked about making some more artificial reefs with some boats that we want to dispose of. Is that an option as well?
It's expensive. I mean, you have to steam clean them. I mean, you have to.
But would that be at our expense or theirs?
Kyle.
It's a wonderful idea, but even the state troopers have been looking at doing the same thing. And the sad thing is, it is extremely expensive. We have to go through the ADEC, we've got to go through Coast Guard, and every bit of hazard material has to be disposed of. So the cheapest way is to do it this way. If we had maybe one or two where we could take, or the owners could take the time to do all this, it'd be wonderful. But when we're talking 17 or more boats, we just can't. I mean, that's astronomically expensive.
Well, I get not all of them, but would it be at our expense if they're wanting them for the artificial reefs? Well, why would we do it?
They don't do it that way. That it's a wonderful idea. They say, sure, we'll be glad to take them, but they have to be past inspection, and the Coast Guard has to come in and identify that it's absolutely ready to go.
Okay, I know there was some more council discussion.
Yeah, I guess on my list, I wanted to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan timeline. Annie, I know you're working on that. You mentioned it in your report, the comprehensive plan timeline, and you're working with Kitty Farnham on that. And just wondering what that process is going to look like. Do you know at this point what that process will look like?
So my conversations with Kitty have the information reverts back to, my goodness, was it back in June or July when we were talking about it? The process would be the same in terms of trying to gather community input. The first step is actually she would like to meet with staff to get our input into how we feel we did with the comprehensive plan and get that feedback. And from there, expand the conversation to our community and stakeholders, business owners and such. And then from there, of course, council, we would need work groups with you guys to get direction. But I think at that point, you should have feedback from the staff and the community to work and to be able to participate always to your ability, and take it from there into building. I think we had discussed not only having a comprehensive plan, but having 5 master plans, which are a little more detail oriented and a little more strategic in their nature. And so that is still on the table with our proposal.
Yeah, we don't want to end up with what we had before. We want something much more comprehensive. So the timeline on that right now, do you have a sense of that?
I just started conversations with her again. Sorry, but I can report back at the special meeting on the 9th, which isn't too far from now, and let you know a little more detail. Of course.
I guess the next thing is, Dan, you had sent something to us on the tank farm property at the head of the bay.
Yeah.
And you want to maybe talk some information on that now, or?
Monty might have more information than me. It's a 450-page document. I did some quick math. It's like $1,500 an acre, or something like that, as is. But it comes with its. I know that in that document it will probably reference some of the requirements, as in we will be taking possession of known contaminated land. And when we met with them like 6 years ago, it was going to be free. Now it's like $158,000 or $168,000 of 58 acres. There's going to be, so it's something that we will have to work with DEC and possibly the EPA and see what our liability is. One of the essentially there's a plume under this thing, okay, and we want to know going forward what happens if that plume begins to migrate. Okay, right now with our current rainfall, it's been static, and it's been static for quite some time. They've been, prior to this, I'm pretty sure you guys have seen the well monitoring has been happening. It was certainly happening last winter. So that may also be in the report. But the good news is they got us a number, okay? And I think that that property will be with certain restrictions, it will certainly have a lot of potential, as there'll be some areas for recreation, and I think that might be a much better spot for like a bicycle adventure track or whatever. And anyways, 58 acres, which for our little fjord, that's huge. And so it'll be very timely that we have this discussion prior, at the same time that we're doing the comprehensive plan, because one of my problems with talking about it in the past was we don't have it, so we're like planning about a fantasy, and we need to go into this eyes wide open, make sure that it makes sense. I think it will, but I mean, we want to know what the expectations are for ownership.
Good. Yeah, sounds good. I guess the other thing I had on my list was lease issues. Annie, is there anything that you can tell us about the status of the lease issues at the Triangle, along the waterfront? Is there anything left to be done down there?
As far as I know, the Triangle issues have been resolved and agreements have been entered into for any encroachments that have occurred. The Campobello lease transfer went through without any issues. Right now, Scott and I are working with the railroad to finalize the Jim Barnett campground / parking and camping leases. And I probably think we should be done with that here in the next couple of weeks, finalizing that settlement agreement. And the next lease issue that we are working on is another Jim Barnett issue with the Inn at Whittier. I can't remember the name of the lease parcel right now, but it's the one that the Major Marine bunkhouse is situated right next to the Inn at Whittier. Jim is interested in dividing that lease and retaining ownership of the lease for the Major Marine area and then transferring the remainder to the Inn at Whittier. So we are just in the infancy of those negotiation processes, so we don't really have anything right now to report. We are trying to figure out our next steps with planning and zoning, and really we're in the infancy. I really don't have anything to report, but that is on the table. Yes, sir.
Just a follow-up statement, and don't know that this is even a priority anymore, but the oft-discussed lease issues over the years has been a standardization of the master lease subleases. There's a couple different formats out there, at least, because I have 2 different leases on 2 contiguous lots.
That is one of several issues that I would like to address with leases. One is streamlining and making sure that, like you're saying, that it's more of a standard lease, that just the only thing that really should be changing are the price and the description of the property. Beyond that, lease compliance, there's the lease language, we really need to decide. I'm completely making something up. If a lease says that you're going to have, a hot chocolate stand and it's, you're storing puppies, that's not working, right? So as a council, in terms of setting a policy, how do we want to handle leases that aren't in compliance? That is a policy statement that should be decided by the representatives of our community. So there are other conversations that we will need to enter into when we're discussing leases. I just haven't quite been able to get there. But it's on my, what do you guys call it, Annie's death list or something? I have a 7-page list of things outstanding.
Nice analogy.
And she writes real small too.
Call yours.
So, any other council discussion?
Yeah, if I may. I'm hoping that we can make some progress with this website, intranet, and how it is going to coexist with the Open Meetings Act, so that there isn't, you can imagine, that things could go wrong with it, and but from a historical perspective, being able to have Whittier's history for reference would be a very good thing to have. I was just informed not too long ago that this isn't the first instance that we've missed a grant. It's moving forward, how do we not miss these? And it could be a tool.
We need several tools, really, are the conversations that I'm having with Jim right now. There are many accountability measures that need to be in place, from having a calendar with grant reporting. It just goes on and on. Right now, I think the battle that the administration is fighting is that we continue to be incredibly short-staffed with an incredible amount of issues and fires that we're having to mitigate. It's it's not an excuse. I'm hoping you will take it more as a reason. We are aware that there needs to be more accountability, and we're working towards that. We do think that updating the website would be a good tool in several different ways, and I think that as we continue the conversation with how we would like the information to be shared, we will of course always be vetting how and what we would like to see done to make sure that we are in compliance not only with the Open Meetings Act, but any potential legal issues or any red flags. This is going to be a process that we will be seeking comment from. This is our idea that we need to have this. What do you guys think? If we have to have work groups and work sessions, I think it's a valuable exercise, especially over the winter when things tend to slow down, to have those conversations about this is where we are, this is where we would like to get. What do you guys think? So, yes, sir.
Thank you for opening the door. I just wanted to make the comment that accountability can be established and will be established with codified policies and procedures.
I agree.
Twice tonight. It's only twice.
I know. You're on a roll. I love it. I agree.
So, Council, I had been working with, I can't remember the name of the tug operator, but anyway, they reached out to me and asked if we had a community member that would be willing, and if I would identify someone that I felt would be qualified to attend an exercise that essentially is a mock oil spill in Valdez, utilizing the tug resources, and we would be attending as a stakeholder in the oil spill response framework that we have been trying. Prince William Sound RCAC has been helping us preserve the current method of communication in which we are a stakeholder as a member community of Prince William Sound. So what I'd ask for the council to consider is I'd like to send our chair of Ports and Harbor, and Greg's also participates in our EMS, and I think he'd be an excellent candidate to be our representative. And it would be essentially one night stay in a hotel, because it starts at like 6 in the morning, and then round trip airfare, and then food. So it's pennies on the dollar. I mean, they're going to, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars they'll spend to do this, but they would appreciate Prince William Sound RCAC would appreciate that we exercise that option. The pipeline is not going to pay for this, so I'm just asking council. I'm guessing it'll be around $700. It'll be well within Jim Hunt's discretionary thing. So
I agree. Yeah, that's
okay. Good idea. So, and Greg was nice enough to volunteer his time, and I think he'd be an awesome candidate. And we're looking forward to hearing back. So, and then I had one more item under council discussion. I saw in Annie's report that we will eventually begin discussion with GGA regarding the Girdwood contract extension of the policing, and
that's not GGA.
Yeah.
That's actually with Girdwood proper.
Oh, okay. Okay.
GBOS. Yeah.
Girdwood.
That's the real government.
Okay. It's a complicated life we lead. So anyway, what I don't have any problems with that. What I thought would be worth our while as a community is to essentially engage administration in, I know it won't be an official contract, but essentially an expectation of what we as a community want to see in terms of coverage from our police. I know that Greg has done an excellent job of explaining the absence of police officers, but when I do the math of essentially the way it's done today, it's approximately 56 hours in which we don't have police officers. We have, maybe we can muster some, but it's not the 24/7 coverage that we're used to. And I understand that, if an individual is arrested and taken to town, that we would essentially not have coverage for three hours. But in reality, that works out. I mean, I haven't seen the statistics, but on a busy summer, I don't anticipate that we see more than 2 arrests a month. So we're looking at not having coverage for 6 hours. There's a big difference between 6 hours and 56 hours. And I'd just like to have an expectation of performance of our police officers here nailed down before administration goes before Girdwood. And so, there's all kinds of things that we've learned since we engaged that first contract. One is we do a great job of training our officers, and they're highly sought after by other agencies. And so what is the level? Okay, here's what happens, or how I perceived it, is that there have been a couple times when the number of officers that we have drops to a certain level where I get the perception that we're servicing that contract at the expense of Whittier. And I think that both contracts can be honored. I just would like to have an expectation of delivery of service here, and I want us to have as high a priority or higher priority than the Girdwood contract. And so this is not something we would discuss today, but I would like to have some type of, I would like council to have either a workshop or some type of discussion with administration prior to administration having beginning their negotiations. And what do you?
I think I brought this up at the last meeting. 24/7 coverage in Whittier was a mandate. I think we had a referendum back in the mid-2000s, and that's what the locals wanted.
I'm just looking for, because it is a fact that if you get someone arrested, that we would have no officer present for 3 hours. But that's the exception and not the rule. And so what I was saying, yeah, we might not have coverage for 6 hours out of that whole month versus
and that's 6 a week is what you were saying?
No, six out of, I'm saying if we had 2 arrests a month.
What was the 56 hour?
The 56 is, I think we have officers leave Whittier and patrol Girdwood in the morning as well as in the evening.
So we're losing 56 hours a month?
I was just guessing 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, times 7 is 14, and just rough numbers, 56 hours, and that doesn't include what happens when things happen. What happens when they have to do. There are certain things. It's good. It's police work, but there are some emergencies that happen over there that require them to stay over there.
Well, I want to make sure. I agree. The focus of our police department as expansive as it may be, there needs to be a strong focus on Whittier, and 24/7 coverage is an expectation that I believe our citizenry has come to expect.
Right, and anyway, I want to hear that from administration so that they know the level of service that they're expected to provide us when they go forward to negotiate this time, because it didn't seem to, it didn't work out.
Copy.
Would you have? Mike's on.
It's him.
Oh. Can you speak to that? Sure. Well, there's three components here. Let's see, there's Girdwood, Whittier, and Anchorage. And I'm wondering, it seems like has Girdwood abdicated their responsibility to their community? Are you guys ever going to have, all politics are local. You see what we're going through. Are you guys, there's a couple of people from Girdwood here, so that's why I'm asking that question. Is your community, are they wrestling with the problem of what to do with the policing your community besides Whittier and Anchorage? But I'll have to go to one of your meetings, I guess, to find out, unless you'd like to speak to that.
I can speak to that, although I'm not completely sure I understand your question. Could you rephrase it?
Okay, there's a contract coming up in 2020 to police Girdwood, right? And the population of Girdwood is what, 3,000 to 4,000 people? 2,000. We're a couple of hundred here. And so you see what we're talking about is policing Girdwood. I'm not saying that Girdwood has abdicated their responsibility to their community. What I'm just saying is it easier and cheaper for you to do what you're doing now as to, taking the bull by the horns and wrestling with your own policing?
So, as you may recall, a few years ago, we had trooper coverage.
Right, exactly, right.
True, so we were left in the situation of having no policing at all. We investigated, I think it was in total 5 different options, and it ended up getting narrowed down to 3, which was either Anchorage would patrol, we would pay the troopers extra money for them to do what they did before, or potentially the contract with Whittier. And we looked at all of those. Anchorage decided they didn't want to participate. The troopers decided they wouldn't participate, so we ended up with one choice. In the 6 or 8 months we had to make that decision, we decided there was no way we could create a police force from scratch. So we've taken the last 3 years to re-look at those different options. And now we're in the situation, the troopers are still not interested. There's been some changes in the way that Anchorage run their police department, so they're now in a position to offer Girdwood policing, although it's a lower cost to the rest of the municipality. And then we've been really, really happy with the way that the relationship has worked with Whittier Police Department.
That's what I understand as well.
I think it's been, I'm not sure from this side how successful it's been. I've been I've heard from Chief Russell, the previous chief, that it was going well on both sides. I see there are still some concerns on this side. But definitely from our point of view, we thought it was a mutually beneficial arrangement. So we were providing effectively winter needs for a police force as well, which would allow you to hire more year-round officers. So, as we go in, we've all learned a lot from the last few years. And as we go into the discussions and negotiations for the possible renewal of this contract, I'm sure we'll bring up many lessons that we've learned over the time. I don't actually think the contract we have at the moment has a minimum hourly requirement of how often police are expected to patrol and go. I think we've been happy with the level of patrol, but I'm sure that's something that can be discussed and negotiated even over the next few months.
Thank you. I've heard nothing but good reports from...
We've had, I think we had a very close vote as to whether we were prepared to tax ourselves. It ended up passing by 3 votes. It was 412 to 415. In Godwin. So we had a very narrow decision in favour, but I've spoken to many of the people who voted against. They all say they're completely supportive of the arrangements now. And if there was a re-vote now, they would vote yes. So again, I think that's thanks to the Whittier Police Department who've really done an outstanding job.
Well, it's nice to know that we're not wasting our time then. Yep.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
We are, I think your original point is, are we abdicating our response? I would obviously say no, but I'm biased. We are somewhat limited in what we can do given the structure of the municipality and the way the service areas are organised and the way our tax cap is organised. So we have somewhat limited room to pay for services and to contract particular services. But I think, again, where we are now, we have a much more flexibility going forwards. But I think where we are now, we'd definitely be, I think, happy to continue with the relationship is somewhat similar, but adjusted but for need.
So basically it gets down to a mill rate then, you know?
Ultimately, we only have so much we can actually tax.
Right. Yeah.
We have limits.
It was very informative. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input.
And by and large, I'm very happy. I think it would be very instructive to have essentially a chat with administration in terms of expectations and make sure our expectations are met as well as yours. And so it's just an improvement over what's existing. Okay. Any more council discussion? Moving on to citizens discussion. Karen Dempster.
Yes, sir. In the flesh. Just wanted to mention, you talked about if you go to your last meeting at hour 2:06:30, there was stated by a council member, need for administrative policy development, pushing $1 million on lawyers. The information came from this council.
Now, hey, Karen, you know that as well as I do.
Okay, and here's what I put together for you, because it made no sense to me as a lawyer that you could ever run up those kinds of bills. But a couple of things that I did see. Now, all of you should be asking to see the attorney bills. They're detailed. Date. Attorney A talks to Miss So-and-so regarding writing a letter, and then the amount. Then the next date and the amount. So you know exactly where that money is being spent. Now, my little head went ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching when the attorney walked in with this box of these brochures on the exchange of the dock for the railroad land. It's only 6 pages that have to do with the dock and the railroad land. You know what the rest of this is? It's taken directly from your website, your comprehensive plan. And then the infrastructure plan. They charged you to take your documents, put it in this, and then bill you. And this particular firm is noted for doing that. Now, 3 things that your old city manager did. He changed attorneys. You had somebody else. I think it was Brooks Chandler. Then he brought in the other firm that all of a sudden the cost goes up. He changed the insurers. You were with AML, and he put you with a firm that he was on the board. And then he changed your accounting program, and you've had nothing but problems ever since. He was told at the time, don't do that. It's not a good deal for this size of a city. So you may want to look at untangling some of the legacy that he has left behind. But I wanted to assure you of something else too. look at your attorney bills. The other thing is, I went on court records. There's only 4 cases where Whittier's been named as a defendant, and the last time was in 1999. Now, civil cases take longer because we're required by law to deal with criminal cases first. So they can take up to 3 years, which is this one bill that was a little bit higher. But you haven't been dealing with litigation. There's been nobody here, ex-employee, that has filed suit against you. So look at those attorney bills and figure out where they're coming from. We still have to go back to anything over $5,000 on a budget item should have come before you, and you should have had an opportunity to address it. Now, the last thing I want to say, because it's irritating me, there is money out there, folks, federal money and state money, but mostly federal money. But I was just going through the, if you haven't been there, it's the Division of Community and Regional Affairs. They've got a freebie how-to manual to write grants for municipalities, tribal organizations, nonprofit community associations. But I don't know if you've fixed it yet, but if you don't have a SAMS account, it's a Systems from Account Management, you can't get penny one from the feds. Nothing. And that was the problem last time. The city didn't act in time. I think Mr. Janik was in charge. Kyle, I would keep irritating him because I'd say, you've got to get over there. It takes a month. Once you tell somebody to get a SAMS account set up, it takes about a month for the number to come in, or the account number to be opened up. And then you have another 3 days where you set your targets. So once that's done correctly, then if you set facilities, police department, harbor, then they're ready to go whenever they want to write a grant. It's set up. Now you have to renew it every year, but that's a small thing. But you've got to get that set up, and if it hasn't been set up, you guys can't write penny one.
Karen,
that's it. I'm done.
Okay.
Do it because the money is there. I was tripping over the money. But you can't do it if you don't have a SAMS account. And on the last thing, Annie has it, is an annotated timeline of everything that was done on that grant, including all the emails that show exactly what was going on. I hate to throw it at Janik, but that's where it ended up, that he didn't do the final step. But the other thing is the grant, and you've seen the grant, Dave, it was that thick. It was scanned over in the harbor by the harbor ladies, submitted. Kyle set everything up, and then when we pushed the submit button, nothing happened because the last step hadn't been done by the city, in this case of Mr. Janik. But all of that documentation is there, including the people that had to scan the documents. I'm a little ticked because we kept doing it for 7 days later. We had a Coast Guard certificate. We were ready to roll. I thought they would have taken it even late, but it was never set up.
Your enthusiasm is appreciated.
I know, but I want you guys to get this money. It's there. Get your hands on it.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one comment. The grayed out submit button, that's going to be in the report, correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Do we have any other citizens discussion? Yes, sir. Anthony.
Yes. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Sorry, there we go. First time, sorry. I just wanted to speak to something that Mr. Denmark talked about. I'm personally pretty upset about, because as some of you guys know, I probably fish salmon run more than anybody. And I've seen that bear countless times. This year, last year, the same bear, big, really heavy, really shiny, really fat, because it's been eating all the fish. And I fished there within 30 feet from that bear. several people might say it's foolish or whatever, but that bear has never done anything. And for somebody to say, oh, to come out there with a bow, I didn't know all the details. As far as I know, somebody shot it with a bow. And I don't even know if that's exact, but no matter what, I just feel like even if that bear got into some trash, it's the trash receptacles that weren't set properly. It's not the bear. If it was set properly, the bear wouldn't be taking trash out. And to kill a bear based on trash, I think that's ridiculous. And in other places like Anchorage, I was just visiting some friends in Chugach, and they told me, oh, we got to pick up our trash because if a bear gets into it, you get a ticket. And I think that should be the responsibility of whoever has trash and not the bear. I mean, if the bear's in the road, I just run it over or shoot it because it's standing in my way. I don't think that's right. So, just wanted to voice my opinion.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony.
I like that bear too.
Huge party.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Just one follow-up comment on that. I would hope that my earlier comments were not meant to suggest that I would anyway condone violation of city ordinance or violation of any kind of policies. And that was not my intent, nor am I defending any of the actions of anybody that may have been involved with that. My concern was not to engage in a conversation that would violate anybody's privacy or any kind of issues that way. I can reassure the council, Mr. Denmark, and the comments that were just so eloquently portrayed, that appropriate action will be taken, that there isn't an excuse for illegal activity regardless of who may do that, and just to reassure the council and the community that this is not something that is being excused, winked at, or tolerated. So, thanks. I hope that clears it up and that there was not the misunderstanding or misperception that anyway I was trying to defend or excuse.
No, I totally understood. I was just...
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Bears don't habituate themselves.
October 4th, right? All right, I'll be quick. Just wanted to do some planning, or Port and Harbor kind of plugs. October 4th is our next regular Port and Harbor meeting. It'll be here at 7 o'clock. Please come join us. I think we're going to dive into, Kyle's not here now, but we're going to dive into the budget. We're also going to dive into the policies and procedures of the stuff, so it's going to be a pretty important one. Hopefully we'll have an idea of the budget, somewhat of an idea of the budget, so we can kind of make it work, or at least get an idea and get something moved towards you guys. Also, this week it is SERVs. I am part of that SERVs. I work on it with Matt Kopek. There's going to be lots of boats in and out Mondays and Tuesdays. If you have VHF, there's lots of radio chatter. Just keep that in mind. The inn staying open, that's kind of the reason the inn stays open this late, is because he's full. They feel all full. So good stuff. It's training every year. It's kind of the same training for us, but it's a good refresher in case there is another big oil spill problem. And then on top of that, our CAC is sponsoring the free cruise to go out and watch them in action. I've seen it. It's cool stuff. They pull all the oil spill stuff off of the big barge. They have setups. You'll have seiners linked together, cruising around. They'll have a boat to go out and throw things out into the water, buoys, pretend it's an oil spill. Really, really cool to see. And the way it works, and I mean, you've got 50, 60 boats all at the same time. Working together to get what's done. Hopefully we never have to do it, but if we do, we're pretty well trained. That's Tuesday. So next few days when you're at the school for breakfast at 8:45, free breakfast at 8:45 every day, talk to the secretary there and they can get you the free tickets for Tuesday. Then the last one is Mayor Blay, you guys kind of approved me of going over to Valdez. It's put on by Crowley. Which surprises me because Slicer's taking over, but Crowley's putting it on. So I don't know, maybe that's part of their transition into the new thing. But I will definitely report back to you guys how that goes and where it's at. So I've been to Valdez in a few years, so it'll be fun. Cool. Yeah, so breakfast, Tuesday cruise. I'm saying that because my wife texted me from watching this tonight. So if she's still watching breakfast every day. Yeah, at the school every day. Come join the kids. Good food, really good food. But yeah, so planning and zoning, or Ports and Harbor meeting, October 4th at 7 o'clock. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor, well, do we have any more citizens discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Isn't there?